Good evening, and welcome to SlushHeap Season 2, Episode 3. And the topic for tonight is writing children's books. And we have some fantastic guests that fit right into what we're trying to talk about tonight. So with that, let me introduce my co-host, Darcy. You want to take it away and introduce our guests?
Of course, of course. Good evening to everyone, and thanks for tuning in, as usual. We're here tonight with a couple of writers, actually two different levels of children's writing, I'd call it. We have Joe Marshall, who writes what most would consider children's books, more for the grade school, early grade school, and then we have L.M. Preston beside her, and she writes middle grade or youth, right? Young adults, so sort of a wide-ish range for you, and you know, hits more on the older kids, the high schoolers, teenagers, that sort of thing. So we have a good coverage tonight, and we look forward to speaking to both of them. And I am going to hand it back over to Rudy to get started with the questions tonight, but I look forward to speaking with both of you.
Thank you. Joe, let me start with you. The reason I want to start with you is actually we own several of your books. The Twig Stories. My wife is the reader. I am not. So then she gives me that Twig Stories for Dummies that I can get a quick synopsis of what's going on. But she was just so impressed with that series, the stories, the drawings, you know, and it's just when you see it, right away you can tell what it is you're trying to do. But I want to hear it from you. Why did you choose this particular thing? The Twig, I mean, like I said, if you see the character, you can see why it's called a Twig Story. But what made you choose that?
Well, my daughter and I were on a vacation up in British Columbia, and we were so excited about going, and I had gone when I was younger, and I really wanted to share the beauty of that country with her. And when we went up, we were really disappointed to see so many dying trees up there, and we didn't understand why the forest was impacted so badly, and it was really sad. So when we came back, we started investigating the reasons, and come to find out it was because of climate change. The bark beetles that normally would die off in winter, in cold winters, because of the warming temperatures, were surviving and killing the trees, and nobody could stop them. So anyway, we got interested in that whole subject, and of course Allie, being only in 4th grade, was really worried about all the wildlife and all of that. So we started thinking about how we could write a story about climate change and kind of gear it toward the elementary school level, but still have it fun and exciting, you know. So we made up the twig that we say live in our backyard, and these big old cedars we have, and the twigs became our heroes about dealing with climate change consequences. So it really began that summer in British Columbia on our vacation.
Great. Darcy, do you have anything you want to?
No, yeah, of course. I think that that's a fabulous idea, and I think one of the things that made me contact you about doing this show is because you had that idea in your head before you started writing the book, and that it gave you a purpose for writing it. And I wonder, would you recommend that to new authors, that they sort of have something that they're passionate about and to write on that topic versus trying to just start with a blank page and go for it?
Absolutely. It's difficult writing a book. You've got to really plan it out and stick with it. And if you have a motivation to do something other than just write a book for yourself, we're motivated because we want to share our royalties with conservation nonprofits. So when you're tired or when you don't want to do it, you know, when you need advice and guidance, you can go to people in the conservation field, research professors, and they can get you motivated again and help you get through those spots when you just get tired of writing. So I think it's wonderful to write for some other reason. I don't think I could have done it or stuck with it if it was just for fun.
I think I think that's a wonderful point. Now,
so now you're back.
Okay.
Welcome.
Well, all I was saying is LM had a really good point about being around children. I think that helps. You don't absolutely have to have children, but it helps to get their point of view, and to do that, you're going to have to be around them, either as a teacher or an aunt or uncle, and listen to them. I think it's important to listen, like she says, because you're not going to understand their point of view if you're not listening and trying to empathize with what they're thinking about and feeling.
And they are your future audience, right? So you get it firsthand already. You know, as you're writing it, you can get inputs. You know, I know you're going the wrong direction.
I was the kind of mom that read everything. I have a son also who's 26 and a daughter who's 14. And when he was growing up and as she was growing up, I read everything that they read because I wanted to understand what was influencing them. And it was about when Allie was 7 or 8 that we were into the Warrior series by Erin Hunter. I don't know if you know that series.
My daughter loves it.
It's amazing. It's great. And that's a collaboration actually of 3 authors who took the name Erin Hunter as a pen name, and they all worked together to create the Warrior series. And after reading about 12 of those books, it began to get kind of grim. I think, like Harry Potter, it goes into the dark side. You know, there's no place else to go with all their characters. And I thought to myself, well, I could write a story that maybe doesn't go quite into the dark side, and it would be fun. So.
I think that's wonderful. It makes me wonder, do you find that it's more difficult to write a children's voice than it is to write an adult voice? I'll aim it at Joe first.
I don't think I have the vocabulary, Darcy.
I think it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I said to Rudy is I haven't been able to read the full books, but I've read at least snippets of both of yours. And I think that it's wonderful that you both don't shy away from big vocabulary for kids. I think so often authors try to sort of dumb it down, and neither one of you do that. Was that a conscious decision, or was that just something that naturally happened?
Well, the kids will, the ones who understand the vocabulary appreciate it, and the ones who haven't reached that level yet will skip over it and still understand the context. So I don't see any reason why you should sacrifice your writing style or what you want to say. I mean, there's certain common sense that you would use, you know, with the age level, of course. But there is guidance by editors and by people who are in the field who tell you should follow only this vocabulary for this age group. And I just couldn't do that. I couldn't write that way, for one. And also I found with my daughter and her friends who it was that age level it was aimed at, that they loved it. They didn't care that the vocabulary was difficult at some point. And for an 8-year-old, it can be, but for a 6th grader, no.
Right.
So, I mean, you're going to have an age group, and you have to decide how you want to write for yourself, you know, to make your book interesting. And I agree with Ellen. You can't dumb down that vocabulary. You really can't.
No, I know, and it's interesting. I actually found that very interesting because I'm not sure if you're both aware, but they just came out with like a core curriculum across the country now that kids in schools have to follow, and it really has impacted the books that teachers can choose from. And one of the biggest things is like how many syllables you have in each sentence determines what grade level it's considered.
Oh,
I know, and it's crazy. I can't imagine sitting there and counting out the syllables or the, you know, whatever it is. And please don't take me verbatim. I don't know all the, you know, the rules and regulations, but I've overheard little bits and pieces about it, and to me that's insane. So I was just wondering, you know, what advice you'd give to a new author who's trying to get into that. But obviously, in your case, just write it naturally and let it flow.
People are thinking too much if they're doing that. Well, it's like they say, you know, when you write your book and then you write it, then you really write it. Right. First, just write it and then write it. So you've got to have to go through about 10, 15, you know, rewrites and get lots of advice and lots of criticism, and you can't be shy about seeking that out.
Yeah. And
Do you
that's the
guys
scary
send
part.
your book to children? I mean, do you choose an audience of children other than your kids to read your books before you publish them?
Yeah, I worked as a literacy tutor for 7 years at an elementary school level, so I got a really good idea what held a child's interest. You know, and teachers would assign this book, and they're going, no way, I don't want to read this. And the books they select themselves are the ones that we would work with to motivate them to gain a higher level of literacy. So when I wrote my books, I kept that in mind. You know, what's going to keep their interest? First of all, you've got to get them to read.
Right. Right. Exactly. But do you have, like LM mentioned, beta audience? Do you choose kids to test your book before you publish it? To like do a trial read on it before you go ahead and publish?
Yeah, I always have about 4 or 5 kids that read the books.
Okay.
And most of them are ones that I know that will be truthful.
Okay.
You know.
I think that's an important point. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Some kids are so polite, at a young age. They're not going to tell you whether they like it or not. Or I run off the manuscripts and I hand it to them and I say, write all over it. Tell me what you think. And and they're very helpful. Thank goodness that they're as honest as they are.
For you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Children do push you in a direction sometimes you don't want to go. My little girl Allie is always saying, "Mom, you have to kill off one of your twigs. You've got to make a little drama there." I'm like, "But I love my twigs. I don't want to kill them."
I think that you guys are saying something valid, though. If you're not being honest to who you are, then your book's not going to come across the way that you want it to. So I commend you for standing up for yourself and making your own choices. And I also, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, not using certain words or not using certain topics, because that's actually a really big point of debate recently with especially the YA genre, age group, I should say. But because people are really sure how far they should push it, there's this whole thing about pushing YA a little further so that it almost becomes an adult book, and at what point is it no longer YA? Do you think that because you've made those decisions, that's what makes it YA, or is it... Now, Joe, you're hitting on a heavy topic too. You're talking about an even younger audience. Do you try to wash it out a little bit, make it a little less hurtful for the kids, or do you just go right at it?
Well, I think my books are very, very subtle when it comes to the themes of endangered wildlife and climate change, and I kind of lead them along an adventure, a story, a journey that as they take that journey, they begin to learn about the world around them, and then they begin to learn about some serious issues as they take this journey. And the twigs are very innocent. I'm fortunate. I don't have the complexity to deal with that Ellen is dealing with. I can create my own world, and the world is real. It's a natural world here in the Pacific Northwest. It's dealing with very serious issues with the vanishing glaciers, the endangered wildlife, and all sorts of consequences that's happening. And so teachers have difficulty even teaching the subject in school, and so when I wrote the books, I also talked with a lot of teachers. How do you teach climate change? It's scary for children. It's something that they don't understand. They feel it's out of control, and they're growing up in a world that's doomed.
Right.
And so I wrote the story so that even though they're learning about these consequences, there's also a feeling that they can do something about it. Each story ends with a positive message about what can we do. Here's one issue, one small issue. One of the books, Leaf in the Rushing Waters, for example, is the first book in the series, and it's about beavers being able to do something incredible, and that is mitigate extreme drought and flood because of climate change. And how do you teach that to a child? Well, one of the ways is to create this wonderful story about twigs and how they learn how incredibly worthwhile beavers are for our land out here. They're reintroducing beavers into the wild now. So anyway, that's one story, and you just have to. And I take each story with one topic. One of them, Leaf in the Sky Fire, is about bark beetles and the devastating forest. You just take one subject, have the twigs, have an adventure about that subject, and the children at the end of the book learn about it. They understand it, and then they also feel they can do something about it. So you turn a very heavy subject into a feeling that children cannot be so overwhelmed by the consequences of climate change that they can actually do something about it. And the whole series is about adaptation. What can we do, for ourselves?
I hate to go in this direction with this, but it does make me wonder. Do you think because you have that underlying theme, do you think it's made it easier for you to market the books?
I think conservation nonprofits love it.
That's what I was wondering, actually. Like, if you go after that market, yes, exactly. I only ask
small
because
niche.
Yeah. No,
you find people who are environmentally minded, think, oh, this is great. It's wonderful adventures, and they're lots of fun, and they're fantasy. So the climate change issue is more subtle than most people would expect. A lot of environmentalists buy it thinking I'm going to wave a flag about it, but I don't. And so it's kind of wonderful for people who are interested in nature. It's a way to introduce children to climate change for educators. Teachers like it. But I think as far as someone who's just looking at the series and says, oh, well, it's a eco-literature, what the heck is that? It sounds boring. That's where David's art really helps. He's a Disney artist, David Murray, and he really liked the concept, and he's just wonderful. And he said, let me do the whole series for you, and of course I said yes. So if people see the beautiful illustrations, and his covers are great, and his commitment to the series. And so I think that really draws in people into the adventure side. But there's so many children's books out there. You really have to, I think, market your books a great deal. As a children's author, if you want your books to be successful, you have to make a personal commitment to get out there into the schools, into the bookstores, and do it yourself. Even with traditional publishers, they're expecting authors to get out there and sell their books.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, then I don't think you're going to reach a huge market.
Brings up something else I wanted to ask tonight. It's something I've asked of children's authors in the past. How do you approach the situation with the e-readers? Do you try to format your book so that it looks good on that, or do you just kind of go for it and let happen whatever happens? I guess probably, Joe, you're the better, because you've got a lot of illustrations. You're probably the better one to throw that question at.
That was a real concern with David's illustrations. I wanted them to be beautiful in an e-reader as they are in hand in the paperbacks. And I did a lot of formatting the book, especially for children in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. They expect when they open a book, they want to have about 10 pages for a chapter so they can say, hey, I finished a chapter today. So everything, really, that's a motivation there to keep reading, to have these short little chapters. And how many lines on each page, so you format your paperback to be attractive. They take it because of David's beautiful artwork in the cover, but when they open it up, they expect a certain amount of lines on the page so they can read. So with an e-reader, I was like, well, when they translate that to a Kindle, what's it going to look like? There was some concern, and I got a really good idea from a mother in Montreal who said that what she does with her e-reader when the book is too long, because I was worried about Leaf in the Rushing Waters, it's fairly long. and over 200 pages or so. I can't even remember how many. And she says what she does is make the print bigger on the e-reader on the screen, so the child is like scrolling along and getting this sense that they're moving very quickly. And so that's kind of a nice application for e-readers, is that children can change how they read it, parents can set it up how they read it, and fortunately the illustrations came out beautifully. I'm really happy with those. So.
That's great. Actually, I do the same thing with my Kindle, but it's not so I read fast, it's just so I can see it.
Yeah, make it big.
It's much easier than putting on the reading glasses, that's all. No, I think that that's actually a really brilliant point, because that's always been one of my concerns. I have the traditional Kindle, so it's black and white. You always lose a lot, you know, so my kids have no interest in reading books on it, but with the new color, I was curious to see how your images would translate as far as, you know, are they still as attractive as they would be on the page? Do you market to the e-reader audience, or do you try
absolutely.
to, do you?
Yeah. Well, you have to nowadays, and a lot of parents are making that choice for their children. It's a lot less expensive. It's portable. They can take it anywhere they want. If you've got one child in an activity doing soccer and you've got 2 kids on the bench, you know, you want to have something that they can easily take with them and read books. So, no, it's very popular, and yes, I do market specifically to the e-readers nowadays, you bet.
And how do you approach that as a, I mean, obviously, like, the library readings and things like that aren't going to be as effective with the e-reader market. Yeah. How do you go after?
Yeah.
All online.
It's all online, and you can give away the free, you know, the free Kindles. Ellen, you've probably done that, where you do a free, you know, get for 5 days or so, download a free Kindle, and that's very popular. And once they're in hand, they get you can loan them out. And worldwide, e-readers are really great, because you can't expect people. My paperbacks in Japan go for $100 on Amazon because they have to ship them over there. So an e-reader is going to be a worldwide event when you put out on Twitter that you've got free Kindles, you know, available. 3, I do 3 at once always. You know, the whole series that I've got out so far are free, and I got like over 6,000 downloads. That for me, an eco-literature novel, you know, 6,000 free downloads. I was really stunned that many people showed so much interest in it.
That's fabulous. Now, how do you advertise your free, when you are offering them free, how do you let people know?
Twitter is one of the best advertising, you know, avenues that you can choose, I think. Twitter is miraculous as far as spreading the word and people picking up and retweeting it, and that's a really good way to do it. And of course, you do it on Facebook, or I send out emails to all the conservation nonprofits that I can, and of course, the libraries now are big on emails, on ebooks, so it's easier for them to pick it up too. You just notify, do a press release. Always do a press release to let people know. You can do free press releases for young authors getting out there. You can do Web on Wire, PR Online. You can get out there and do a free press release that goes for 90 days. So you need to get out there and investigate all sorts of ways that you can market for free. You don't have to pay for these things.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You know, and that's information that we would love to share. So if you could, you know, pass some of that along to us, we'd love to let the audience know. We'll make sure that's available right on the website along with the video.
Okay.
Did I hear you right that you actually create the character first and then name him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you've got to have a good image of who that person is before you can put a name to it. To him or her. I agree.
See, that's not necessarily something I heard last week, but it was probably because we didn't ask that question. But I kind of agree that, because I said last week the fact that, to me, if I hear a name, I can almost visualize the character already. And if you're doing that, you're playing right into my hands that way. You know. So yes, I would agree with that. Now, Joe, in your case, naming the characters is really not, a question, is it? I mean, the main character,
Well,
I assume, is
yeah.
Leaf, right?
Yeah, they have to be names associated with nature.
Exactly.
But it is fun to play with the names a little bit. Like Russell is one of my favorite characters, but I don't spell it like Russell. I spell it Rustle, like rustling leaves. And so there's a lot of fun with the names throughout the books that you can play with those. His little twin brothers are Berba and Buddy, and it's just fun making them.
Buddy, we got close to Bob.
Yeah, close to Bob. Berba.
Bobby, but it wasn't. It was Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy. Yeah.
And you started to mention you have 3 books out now, and you're writing a 4th.
Yeah.
And each one of them uses the word leave as its main starting point. And you had what? Leave and the Echo Peak?
Leaf and Echo Peak is the last one in this collection. I just call
That's the one you're doing now.
Yeah, it's a collection of 4 in the Twig Stories, and Leaf has these 4 stories, and each one is a separate issue about climate change. And after I get through with this little collection, then I'm going to do one that is Fern, Fern and her 4 books about. It's going to mostly be about the redwoods in California. They have a lot of problems, a lot of endangered wildlife down there. And then Berba and Buddy are going to have their own 4, and that's going to be the marine ecosystems here on the Olympic Peninsula. So it's lots of fun to plan them out. There are serious issues, of course, but it's great naming all these wildlife that are endangered, like a pika. So, there's lots of fun just playing with those names.
Well, the 3 you have out then is Leave and the Sky of Fire, right?
Yeah.
Leave and the Russian Waters.
Yes.
And Leave and the Long Ice.
Leaf and the Long Ice, about the glaciers. Buddy and Berba run away and they get lost on a glacier, and Leaf has to go find them.
Okay. See, that's the other thing, the fact that, and I like the idea of yours is total fantasy, even though you're basing it on real things that are happening to us in the world.
Right.
And what you make is such fantastic use of is the animals. Now, are any of the animals endangered? That you?
Yes, most of them are. And what I set out to do immediately was that the animals do not talk. They're not. They don't dress up in clothes. They're not like that. They remain true to being an animal.
Okay.
But you do get to learn about them through their thoughts and through their motivation and through their actions. So I will take a character like Slapper, which is the beaver colony leader, and you learn how he's thinking, what he's doing, and what motivates him. And he becomes this wonderful character. But at no time does Leaf understand anything he's saying. He is a creature. He's an animal. Right. And Leaf and his family are very much like a little boy in a family setting with good family values. They have a very strong family unit, and I thought that was important to show, even with Twig. So, and Leaf is always stuck taking care of his little brothers, and that was kind of like the way I was in a family of 7 kids.
Ooh,
I took care of my siblings, but you learn a great deal of responsibility from that, and so I bring a lot of those personal experiences into what the Twigs do as a family.
And the other animals you have in there is, I love the fact that you used the word spirit bear.
Oh, spirit bear, yeah. Well, that is a commode bear. That bear there's only about 200 of them left up in British Columbia.
And they're all white.
They're white. They are black bears, actually, defined, but every once in a while, one will be born white.
White, right.
White of even 2 black bears. They'll have one born white. And so there's less than 200 of them left, and they all exist in a rainforest on the west coast of British Columbia called the Great Bear Rainforest. And that's where they are. And it's really sad that they are very much endangered, critically endangered. So the spirit bear is one of the heroes in Leaf in the Sky of Fire.
The other ones are the salamanders and the mountain goats. But the one that really got me thinking is you use the pika. And I wonder, have you had any feedback from the children that they knew what a pika was?
It's really important to describe these animals because a lot of children all over the world and even in the U.S. have no idea what these creatures are. So it's important as you write about one that you give them the setting and you give them the understanding of what this creature is and why it's endangered. And I have found that even though adults who read the book say, oh, well, we understand what that is and you didn't really need to describe it that way or as much, the feedback I get from children is they appreciate that. They like to understand and have the descriptions so they can visualize it. So I spend a lot of time describing animals in a way that is fun for them. But it's important they understand what a creature looks like and what it does and what its habits are.
Well, you must have had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's lots of fun. Finding fun ways to get those messages across. That is a challenge. But, yeah, it's important that they enjoy the stories and laugh at them. And I love it when kids read the books for the first time and they come back and they've written ha, 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 in the margin, to show me, oh, this is fun, this is a good part. And I strive to do that. They've got to have fun reading the books. So, they're not going to read them.
So, Ellen, listening to that, I know it makes me kind of jealous because the book that I wrote with Darcy's help is somewhat like yours, except it goes through the whole age from the time I was born till I'm sitting here now, just about. And, to come up with names for those characters because we had to make them fictitious, even though it's historical fiction. We couldn't use the real names. I'm listening to Jo and what she did. That would be a lot easier to me. I mean, what do you think? I guess you don't mind coming up with names because, you seem to think a lot about what you want to do there.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, you've got to take one trait of an animal like a beaver, and you call him Slapper because he's got this huge tail.
Right.
It's pretty obvious, and and kids relate to that.
You come to think, that's actually very, very true. My children, my three boys, always had animals, had pets, and I can remember the youngest one had a rabbit, and he called it Thumper. And I said to him, why do you call it? I know it's a Disney thing, but I said to him, why do you call it Thumper? He says, you go out there and put your hand in his cage and let me know what he does. And as soon as you
remember the names,
you put your hand in there, his hind legs were thumping.
That's right.
Get out of here! It's my territory.
That's what they do.
So that's good. I like that.
Yeah, I have a guard bunny named Poppy who lives with a hermit named Mantru on the glacier. And Poppy is really aggressive. And if you've ever owned a bunny, you know that they can growl and they can thump and they are really aggressive. So, so it's easy. And you want the children to remember the names of your characters. Let's not make it hard. They shouldn't have to think about it. And that's one of the popular things with the stories. It's very simple. The names are very simple to remember, and the action is always over 3 days. The story, it has to move quickly. It's a fast pace, and you don't want kids to be confused by who the characters are because you name them some strange thing.
Right.
In my opinion, anyway. I think it's fun to keep it simple. Just keep the action moving and have fun with the story.